Just 2 more minutes, sir, and then we'll start. Just
Sure.
we'll wait for 2 minutes, sir. So good afternoon and welcome everyone for this facilitative interactive session on social stock exchange being organized by ICMAI Social Auditors Organization. We have been hearing about the concept evolution of the social stock exchange in India for last couple of years now, almost last couple of years. And I think some of us are aware about the status, the nuances, and the specificities of this new evolving concept in India. And some of us probably have some kind of doubts in our mind, not very clear as to what is this whole concept all about and how do we actually go about building up an ecosystem of social stock exchange in the desired direction. And for this, we are very, very fortunate and honored to have with us Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, who is the chairman of the committee constituted by SEBI for Advisory Committee on Social Stock Exchange. He's going to be talking to us, sharing his perspectives and sharing his huge experience of having worked in the social sector for decades together so as to provide us enlightenment in this new evolving concept of social stock exchange. So before I hand over the session to Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, I would just like to give a brief introduction of him, even though he needs no introduction for that matter, but just as a matter of formality, just a brief introduction about Dr. R. Balasubramaniam. Having embarked on his journey in the development sector by living and working for several years among remote forest-based tribal communities in the southern Indian district of Mysuru, Dr. Balasubramaniam is widely respected development activist, leadership trainer, thinker, and writer. He is the member HR in the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India. He is also a visiting professor at Cornell University, USA, and at IIT Delhi, India, where he teaches courses on leadership and human development. He is the chairman of the Social Stock Exchange Advisory Committee set up by SEBI. After his MBBS, he earned his MPhil in Hospital Administration and Health Systems Management from BITS Pilani. He has a master's in Public Administration from Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard University. His living habits were greatly influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, and at the age of 19, he founded the Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement based on the principle of Ahimsa, Satya, Seva, and Tyaga. He has spent more than 3 decades of his life in the service of the rural and tribal poor in the forests of India. He is also the founder of Grassroots Research and Advocacy Movement, a public policy think tank in India. Dr. Balu embodies a rare blend of grassroots and macro perspectives and policy through his multifaceted experience of more than 3 decades. He is a Tata Scholar, a Mason Fellow of the Howard Kennedy School, and a Fellow at the Hauser Center for Civil Society, Howard University. He was the head and visiting professor of the Vivekananda Chair, University of Mysore. He is a regular columnist in National Dailies and has authored 7 books both in Kannada and English. Dr. Balasubramaniam, sir, we are deeply honored and privileged to have you with us for your words of wisdom and perspective on this evolving concept of social stock exchange. So, sir, in this forum today, we have social auditors, we have people from civil society organizations, we have donors, we have investors. There is a mixed pool of people who are attending this seminar. So we are very, very eagerly awaiting your words of wisdom and perspective on social stock exchange. Over to Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta ji, for first of all for inviting me to be sharing some ideas in social stock exchange. Could I just make a request to the ICMAI team that
yes, sir.
There's that constant notification noise coming? Maybe you could.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, thank you. As people join in, I think its noise is coming. So what I'm thinking, and if that's okay with all of you, is to just have a short presentation explaining what the social stock exchange is, because I know some of you might be attending this for the listening about this for the first time. Some of you might already know something about it, but I thought from my side, to be fair, I can't presume that everybody knows what the status of the exchange is today. So I'll just share quickly some 10 or 12 slides and then open it up for an interactive session so all of us can share and talk about it. I think primarily the social stock exchange was announced 5 years ago, actually to the month. The July budget of 2019, the finance minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, announced that India would be setting up the social stock exchange. And it has been quite a journey in the last 5 years, and we have come quite a distance. And so I would possibly talk about all that. So just let me open up the slides for you, and then I will. Just give me a minute, I think. I'm not able to do it. So, Nikita, if you're able to do it from your end.
Sure, sir. Give me a minute.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, let me continue talking about this exchange. In 2019, when it was announced, we must all keep in mind that several countries had already experimented with this. Now, India's exchanges, primarily the Bombay Stock Exchange, had already mandated the responsibility of participating in the UN's attempt at together a framework for social stock exchanges. And so they were participating for several years in trying to make this happen. But 2003 was the first time when Brazil as a country announced the setting up of the social stock exchange. And 14 other countries tried either full-fledged exchanges or exchange equivalents, if you can call it. And most of the equivalents are actually not really trading platforms. Even today, we don't have any formal trading on the exchanges. One particular exchange, I think in Canada, tried it to some reasonable success, but most exchanges have failed. Most of them, whether it is a standalone independent social stock exchange or it is part of an existing stock exchange, they've had varied experiences. Now, even advanced countries like London Stock Exchange tried it out. We've had several examples in the US, in Canada, and we also have the Singapore tried out. Most of these places, the experience is very different. So, for us to start a 15th exchange, one question that can come into your mind is, why are you even wanting an exchange? So, can I have full
So
screen?
can you see the slides now?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Can I have
Slides are visible. Yes, sure.
screen, Nikita?
Mhm.
Full screen. Yeah, thank you. Next
Yes.
slide. So we all have different opinions, different ways of looking at it, and my own experience is for the previous slide. So the social stock exchange essentially is how do you different kinds of opinions of people, right? And I've had this as a man from the social sector for 40 years of working with communities. I think all of you will agree. For us in the social, so those of you who are NGO friends in this audience today, biggest challenge for NGOs has been that we have difficulty finding consistent funding. We have great challenges finding continuous funding. And then most of us are struggling for survival, that we are not able to pay the required attention to show impact of our work. Many of us are not adequately staffed with high quality talent to be able to write great reports or make flashy presentations. So we are all very good at the work at the grassroots, but we think other things are not so important. So somewhere with what I would call the demand side of the spectrum of social sector organizations are always under pressure. Either it's compliance pressure or it is competition with other NGOs or it's a credibility challenge because many NGOs also lack the credibility to establish their own work and the knowledge of their work in the outside space. And donors who want to give money today, the cash challenge, would want to fund us today and they're not so sure of funding the same project next year or 2 years later. So we're unable to make commitments long enough to communities whom we serve. We're also unable to show impact because the funding of this for the same project is not long enough till it actually results in impact. So most of us are very good in producing outputs, sometimes outcomes, but very rarely can we have funding long enough for impact. So the investors on the other side, essentially today there's a huge growth of investors who are willing to invest money on the social sector space. They find writing a check is easy. So why go to the social stock exchanges? Some people's questions are, what do I get extra by going through all these processes? Some people even say that, okay, I am ready to give money, but I'm not so sure the implementation will happen. Who's going to look at the due diligence? I don't have the wherewithal. I only have the ability to write a check, but beyond that, I can't do anything else. So all kinds of challenges on the investor side. And then the intermediary equation, whether you call it, in our case, SEBI was mandated the responsibility by the government of India to set it up. And SEBI, when they actually started this journey in 2019, had no experience of the social sector. Now, SEBI is a market regulator for the capital market. Now, expecting them to appreciate the social sector was asking too much. But to be fair to them, they started off putting together a team of people. The initial committee which worked on it, the working group, had people mostly from the banking, investor, finance space. And so many of us in the social sector were a little nervous, not sure whether that will work. And then they set up another technical group where a lot of us in the social sector participated. And today we have a reasonably good opportunity where we have tried to look at the entire global scenario, ask ourselves, why did exchanges fail? And if they fail, what could be the reasons for it? So each of them had a view. And SEBI always has a regulatory view. Exchanges felt if there's no trading, why have an exchange? Why can't it just be another giving platform? So like this beautiful story that all of us grew up in, each one has a perspective of it. But what is the real social stock exchange? Next slide, Nikita. Essentially, it enables money to be invested for public use, as simple as that. But it matches investors to organizations, it democratizes giving, it enables trust, it ensures accountability, it brings in enormous transparency. So many people, like I said, there's no fully fledged public stock exchange right now in the world. Possibly if India goes towards that, where if at some point of time, maybe 5-10 years later, and I'm very positive about it, that's likely to happen. If trading like carbon credits, there may be a situation where organizations could trade on social credits. They might actually trade the instrument, but that's sometime in the future. So let's not get there. Now, next slide. So what are we looking for? What does it actually do for us? Why have this? Why not just have the existing systems of funding? So it creates enormous market access. Now, donors or investors sitting in Karnataka would be very happy to fund a project in Meghalaya on education, but would not even be aware of it. By publicly listing, by coming onto the platform, by putting out all the information out there, you're actually enabling a lot of people to participate. And so there is a huge amount of investors and investees who are there. And if the alignment of mission and mission is there, you could possibly look at it. Now, the sector for long, right or wrong, has not been credited with focusing on performance. we are focused so much on activities resulting in performance of which we exist. It's not something, measurement is expensive. Today, we have a complete, well-trained set of people from NISM, which belong to SEBI. The modules were created with a lot of support from all sectors, including the civil society groups. How do you be a social assessment auditor? We don't like to use the word auditor, so I'd like to clarify that. I think it's actually, we are now officially in SEBI calling them social assessors. Audit gives a policing framework. This is not a policing. There is no way any organization in the world can guarantee a definitive return, saying like in the capital world, nobody can say when they take investments, every year on year performance will be 12% or 10%, right? So they can only say we'll try to give our best to give returns and transparently disclose it. So organizations are expected to put it in the prospectus, what their expected performance is, and investors can constantly monitor and track because all the reports are up there on the exchange sites. The cost of listing, though hopefully it will become negligible over time. Right now, the cost of raising capital is higher than normal, higher than what we can do in the market otherwise. But with a lot more organizations coming in, with a lot more experience and expertise growing, it will come down, like the mutual fund market today. Right now, everybody can participate. Today, NSE has already started the one click for social stock exchange also. But the most important, and what excites me, is if we were to wait for money to come in to bring about social development, the wait will be very long. It may never happen. As we are a signatory, as a country, India is a signatory to the SDGs, and by 2030, if we are promising people that we'll deliver on the SDGs, we need $1 trillion to do it every year, and we don't have that kind of money. All countries where private sector wealth is increasing, public sector responsibility and ownership is coming down. So we need to find new channels. In India, around 546, something like $446 billion comes in from government, where the national government mostly and state governments. But we still have a deficit of close to 540 plus billion dollars. And where do you get it from? A lot of young people are becoming wealthier than what my generation was at any point of time. And so they are actually now restless for growth and they're willing to participate. So how do you create spaces for that? Tap into private sector investments and make sure that we can work towards reaching those SDGs. Next slide. So there are clearly a lot of benefits. Now, it's already people are talking of impact investing. And that is what we're trying to do, trying to democratize giving. I already spoke about it. It is, while it can replace traditional philanthropy, we are not expecting to do that. Please keep that in mind. There will always be traditional philanthropy. There are different ways in which Indians give, from a temple to standing at a street light. We give to a person with a baby there, coming to us, asking us for support. We try to distribute blankets to people in the winter. We try to make sure of, when the migrant crisis happened during COVID, several thousands of people contributed to make sure people had food while they're moving from place to place. So India has got a well culturally established practice of giving. During festivals, we try to give. You may call it gift, you may call it giving. But it is not a replacement for that. Social stock exchange only supplements it. You should keep that in mind. It is not a supplanting of it. And we are now looking at opening up a new financial pipeline. That is exactly what the finance minister said in the budget speech. Next slide. I just give this chart. I don't think you should break your head about it, to show how the shift is happening, right? In a fully commercial investing, when you put money into the capital market, when you put money into a company or an industry, or even if it's a mutual fund, you expect returns. That's a fully commercial investing on one end of the spectrum. And it can only be financial markets. It can't do it. Nobody else can give you kind of complete returns. On the other end is donations. If you look at it, traditional philanthropy, where people expect complete social returns. Now, the reality is both sides, we are going to continue to be there, but there is an increasing trend of investors and donors now moving away from the world of sustainable investing. And they call it different words, but essentially between impact and socially responsible investing, where the people look at, many of them have no expectation of profits. We have a lot of giving platforms. There are a lot of platforms like organizations like Rangaday, etc., where they promise a sub-market rate financial return. Most donors actually give it back. But today we are now talking the social stock exchange, where there's a complete social return. Now, how do you even measure it? How do you even say it's happening? Is what the exchange is all about. I'll talk about it. It's just to show how the patterns are shifting. It is not any framework that I'm presenting. Next slide. Several countries, like I said, tried it before, and last decade of my research was on what are the other country experiences. Did it work? Did it not work? We've had exchanges in South Africa and Brazil, which tried out. It was only for not-profit organizations, and only social ROI was looked at. Whereas in the exchanges like Singapore, Canada, UK, they even allowed for-profit organizations, but they also looked at financial returns, but also social returns. All kinds of examples. So what we have done in India, how are we different? We learned from the experience of success or failure across the world, and we told ourselves, how can we make sure that we don't fail again? Are there lessons to be learned? And like I said earlier, my research only looked at the reasons for failure, and we put all this knowledge together and said, how do we succeed? That is a real Vishwaguru concept. We succeed to tell the world what you can do, and we're already doing that. Recently, I was in Kuala Lumpur trying to help the Malaysian government think through how do you set up a social stock exchange. They're already starting on it. Islamic finance is very close to the perfect platform for a social stock exchange. Their prime minister in that meeting itself announced that he's going to set it up. And I'm sure they'll have sooner or later, they'll have one, which is going to be fully functional. Now, what is it different in India, and how are we really different from all this? And what did we learn? The first thing that we learned is if the government is not with you, they are not the agent provocator, if they are not the principal catalyst, it cannot succeed. Government of India is fully committed to the success of the social stock exchange. Recently, they even made sure that social investments in the social stock exchange, the listings, qualify for ADG. Now, hopefully soon, the next coming budget, we've all requested the government if they can consider some percentage of CSR investments could also be into the through the social stock exchange. For example, CSR is expected to touch 25,000 crores this coming financial year, this existing financial year, and we're saying even if it's 5 to 10% is made available, maybe even 5% to start with, 1,250 crore of capital could be available for this. So these are different experiments that we're trying. So government is solidly behind it. Government policy enables it. We have a very credible market regulator in the intermediary space. We have a very active, especially NSE is extremely active and very future looking in terms of growing this exchange. We have 3 very good SROs, which one of you is also there, whether it's ICAI, ICMAI, the company securities organizations, all of you together, professional organizations which are there. And we are very clear that you may not have expertise in social assessments right away, but you'll soon build it. It's not rocket science. And you can only employ those people who actually got accreditation from NISM. And that they also will learn. I'm not saying everybody is an expert overnight, but the beauty of the India's experiment is everybody is serious about making it succeed, whether it's the 3 SROs, whether it's the 2 exchanges, whether it's the SEBI, being the advisory committee or government. So I'm very hopeful and optimistic that success is not very far away for us. It's already started. Next slide, please. And for us, like I said, what we learned a lot. Like in Canada, they're very clear that no secondary market trading, and so right now there's no secondary market trading. In our exchange, we allowed for-profit and not-for-profit. Though a lot of focus is on the NGO sector, but soon we are going to make sure that for-profit organizations come in. We have amended the Securities Act to include zero coupon, zero principal bond. We have thought through the social impact bond process. Hopefully soon somebody will launch it. So I think there is a lot of lessons that we learned. Next slide. And we're making sure we embed all this into a thing. So the whole thing is converging. Social sector with its needs on the demand side, securities market with possibly it will free up capital for investments, the intermediary in terms of exchanges as well as SEBI, the funding and disclosures that needs to be done to make sure that trust, accountability, and transparency is enabled. So these are 3 critical parameters which will actually change the entire social sector, in my opinion. Next slide. So these are already underway. We should keep that in mind. Now, what actually happens? An investor, you can call him a donor because it's not different from a donation in real sense of the word, except that there's not much more diligence here. He wants to invest money in various instruments that we are notifying. Right now it is ZCZP. And organizations, they actually first register on the exchanges. We are very, very clear that an organization must be at least 3 years old, should have a minimum revenue of operating revenues of at least 5 million a year or 50 lakhs. They can't be a fly-by-night operator. They must have clear governance standards. Today, we made it easy for them. Instead of having 20 different ways of registration, we are saying if you got 12A and ATG, that is good enough. Because income tax does their due diligence, and therefore you qualify with all these criteria. And you can first register. You need not even list. you may want to just register and be there, but you have to still declare your social, the reporting has to be there. If you list, then you can list a specific, let's say the organization X wants to list a zero coupon, zero principal bond for 1 crore rupees. They can put out all the disclosures saying this is for education, this is for education of tribal children, it's for education of tribal children for girls, whatever they say. And how will they show the results after 6 months, after 1 year, after 2 years? Shelf projects are also allowed. They can also tell us if they want to do it for 4 years, 5 years, etc. But clearly they must disclose how are they going to measure and what are they going to measure. Who measures will be our auditors from the SROs. And then all that is disclosed, who are the beneficiaries, where are they located. The third-party evaluators and certifying agency will be the SROs, which will be your members, your professionals doing there. The empanelment has already happened. The 3 SROs have been empaneled into the SEBI is already notified the 3 SROs. These NISM is actually trained close to, if I remember the number correct, it might be even it's much above 1,000. So there are already a large talent pool available for you to recruit into your agencies, and they disclose the results. Now they're not policemen. They just state what they find. We have already put out all the reporting formats. It will get notified by SEBI soon once the board clears it. And after that, that is what will be used. The first listing has happened, registration, and the listing has happened in December of last year. So coming December will be the results that they have to disclose. And all those dates have been finalized. The trainings have been done. A lot of investment has been done. One very critical thing we learned from understanding the global experience was, if you don't constantly support building the ecosystem, the exchange will fail. Because NGOs are not used to all this language. They're not used to registrar, escrow account, and all this kind of things. Exchanges are not used to NGOs. So we said everybody needs training. The demand side needs, investors need, the intermediaries need. So we set up a 100 crore capacity building fund with SIDBI, NABARD, both the exchanges contributing, and we're opening up. Now the government is very keen to make this into the payment gateway organization, that is the Section 8 company. Government going to set up a Section 8 company with all this funding to ensure that there is a constant capacity building of the entire ecosystem and all the stakeholders and players in it. And that is a very critical reason for success. And that's also going to happen soon. Though the money is already available, the activity is already happening. Maybe a separate organization for that will also happen soon. Next slide. So, like I mentioned, the zero coupon, zero principal is easy, but we are now going to do development impact bonds, where an outcome funder who's anyway interested in results, and a lot of outcome funders started talking to us now. Now, they want outcomes. They say, okay, I want maternal mortality to come down in maybe state A, district B, in this particular area, maybe 10,000 women or something like that. And they say, I will pay only when they had safe deliveries or safe maternal outcomes. Now, a risk investor would say, okay, it costs 10,000 rupees to ensure that per woman, but it's going to cost me 11,500. I'm just giving you some numbers. I have a 15% overhead to cover the risk. And I will come in and I will say, I will promise the implementing agency, in this case an NGO, one route is HCZP, the other route is I do an development impact bond, and the NGO will get listed for delivery of women at a cost of 11,500 or whatever the cost that they all agree upon. Clearly, the outcome funder knows there's a 15% overhead, or in this case, I'm just saying some number I'm just putting out there, which the risk investor will carry because he's carrying the risk. Outcome funder doesn't spend the money before the actual outcome happens. The implementing agency, maybe they enter into a contract with the risk investor. They say every year, these are the measurements, this is what you deliver, this is what the social assessment report should say, and we continue to support you. So as long as they deliver, they're going to get their activity funded. So they're assured of money. The beneficiary gets the services. The SROs, the third-party evaluators, actually measure this and say, is it happening or not? And once the report is accepted to the outcome funder, he then gives the money to the risk investor. So this is also likely to happen. The outcome funder could be state governments, it could be panchayats, it could be any organization, multilateral organizations, bilateral organizations. And that way, everybody is very sure that outcomes happen. Next slide. So this is just a representation. And so the reporting standards have been set. Clearly, this A part of the report is strategic intent and goal setting. What problem are you addressing? What are the target segment you're serving? We are very clear that in our definition that the primacy of social intent should be preserved. For non-profits, it's very easy. For profits, we are saying 67% of the total expenditure or the people served. So we have put a standard for everybody. That is how we measure. And we want to know the approach. We are now saying the logical framework approach has to be followed because it's easy to measure. All the standards are there. So theory of change has to be disclosed. There's a social impact scorecard that is there, and there's a general information. You want to make sure your governance is straightforward, your funding details are there, your previous history is there, any legal issues, kind of total amount of money that you could handle, because organization having 50 lakhs today suddenly can't file a 10 crore listing, because the ability to absorb money should be there. So everything should be disclosed. So it's a regular process. It's quite demanding. Initially, when people start doing it, they may find it tough. But once this becomes a norm, everybody will find it easy. Next slide. So I think, like I said, close to $560 billion gap is there. Today, there's so much of energy around social entrepreneurship. Whether you take health sector, education sector, the energy space, green energy, opportunities are plenty. So we should see how do we actually ensure this. And as government investments are going to stagnate or start coming down, we need to bring other support investments into the system, because equity cannot be a slogan. People have to understand that investments on human capital or investments on producing social results cannot be just waiting for time to happen. We have to make it happen today. And it's a great opportunity for all of us to come together. And this battle, like I gave the elephant story at the beginning, all stakeholders must start having a unified vision, must start appreciating this. They might bring in different expertise and talent to the table, but they must all have a common goal. Together, we must make up our mind that we cannot do this alone on our own. It doesn't matter whether you're a cost accountant or you're a chartered accountant, what difference does it make? Or it doesn't even matter or a company secretary. What we are looking for is commitment to serving this nation. We might use different platforms, but together all of us should say we can build a great nation. And this could become an example for poorer countries, in the global south, whether it's Africa, other places. We should be the leader in telling the world that there is a way to succeed. Next slide. I think we're done. So, like I said, the ecosystem, I already explained this, the demand side, the supply side, the infrastructure, everything is in place. Now, government will be the role of the market maker influencer, and that's why it's creating the social stock exchange, the capacity building Section 8 company. And April 23 itself, both NSE and BSE were already formally set up the exchanges. BSE is slower than what we would like, but NSE is really moving fast and making up for it. There are more than 100 registrations already there together, both of them. There are 8 or 9 listings that's happened. Total of 12 crore rupees has been raised. Virtually everybody's had 100% subscription. We are now saying the subscription amounts have been also, initially it was very high. Now we are saying even 50 lakh can be the minimum subscription size. The subscription size. And individual can invest right from 10,000 rupees now. Earlier it was 1 lakh and 2 crores. That has been changed. 1 crore and 2 lakhs. That has been changed. So now ATG has also been available. Like I said, the capacity building fund has been set up and programs and started. Recently, also there was a massive training program for all the exchanges. How do you do due diligence of the NGOs getting listed and registered? NISM has already developed the program and certified a lot of people. 3 SROs are notified. So a lot of things have happened. Now we all have to work together to make sure, you can remove the slide. Thank you so much. To make sure that we are all in this together. The more you start talking about it to your clients, the more you start talking about it to people who reach out to you, the more actually we can get done. So I would stop here and open it up for questions. And if Gupta ji is moderating, if you can raise the questions, I'd be happy to, the next 15-20 minutes left, I'll be happy to clarify any doubts that you have. Like I said, this is a journey we are traveling together. We might not have answers to all the questions. We might not have foreseen all the problems that could arise, but the seriousness and intent of the government of India, the seriousness and intent of SEBI, the advisory committee, and the exchanges is 100%. So, and obviously the seriousness of the SROs also is very high, because the intensity which all of you participate, setting up this kind of virtual town halls, is all indication that together we can solve the problem. So I'll stop here and listen to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir. Our sincere thanks to Dr. R. Balasubramaniam on behalf of ICMEI, social auditors organization as well as all the participants in here, which form part of the diverse parts of the SSC ecosystem who are there. And this now is going to be an interactive session over the next 15 minutes or so. Those who want to raise a query or share a perspective, share a view, may kindly raise your hands, and one by one, I'll be calling upon you to make your comment or make your views for that matter. Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening. This is Ramesh Swami from Unnati. Hi, Balu. I have a few questions. I take this forum as a very important forum because ICMA are there. So I thought I will go a bit technical also. One, of course, we is about the social assessors. Yes, NISMs have identified a lot of social assessors, trained, etc. That part of it is over. But there has been a mention of audit firm, audit assessor firm, right? So an individual assessor cannot sign the report. It has to go through the audit firm, and that audit assessing firm, the eligibility criteria have not yet been discussed, has not yet been announced. If it has been done in the past few days, I don't know, but we don't have audit firms which can become assessors, because individual assessors can only give a report, but the audit firm has to sign it. It's almost like an articles person doing all the work, but the CA has to sign it. That closure of that loop has not happened. So that is one question I have, which is there. The second question, because I will say all the questions so that it can be answered one by one. This issue of MCA coming in. When you are a listed Section 8 company, the rules which come into play for a listed companies are very huge. And it has been classified ZC, ZP as an instrument, whereas it should not be. It's a kind of a donation kind of a thing. So the rules of LODR, which is announced by SEBI or by the exchanges which are asked by them, is very simple. It is LODR you have to comply with, right? But the moment MCA rules are attached to it, a Section 8 company is into deep trouble, because you are talking of independent directors, you're talking of XBR filing kind of thing. There are many such clauses which comes under the MCA rules. So there is a requirement from the MCA stating that for a social stock exchange listing, these are not required. It can go by LODR alone. That is something which the regulatories must and MCA will have to issue, because otherwise it's a very difficult situation for many Section 8 companies. Believe me, we will run away. We will not be able to work on those rules. The kind of cost which will incur is so high that no ordinary Section 8 company which is raising 50 lakhs and 1 crore or 2 crores can manage these kind of expenses which are under the MCA Act. It is okay for 500 crores when they go for an IPO and all that. So this is one second very important element. Third, of course, is the cost of listing, etc., is becoming very high. BSE is asking today just for registration renewal 60,000, and so many aspects are coming in. So the costs are going high. Those are some of which is, at least in the exchange levels, they should not be looking at those kind of costs. So that is a third point which I wanted to raise and keep it in place. The fourth is a very big suggestion.
I would answer now, Ramesh. I think I'm going to interview. Okay. Questions are becoming too long. I lose sight of questions.
Okay.
And for the benefit of others, Ramesh Unnati is the first organization registered. That's why his questions are real practical and pressurizing, because he has to find solutions. Now, for the first solution is, it should soon get notified by SEBI. The committee has done its job. It has to be SROs who will be applying the social assessors, and there'll be it could be the firms. And so getting three of them to agree. And let me be very frank, and all the friends in the ICMAI may not like this. Each professional organization has got every organization has got, every individual has got his own ego. Each of us think that without me, the world will not exist. And especially if all such people come together, professionals come together. I am a physician. And if you put me in a set of 100 physicians, individually we think I'm the best physician in the world. But once you all come together as an organization, we think we are the best or the only organization in the world which can make the world operate. So getting 3 organizations to sit together to agree to a common unified framework took us quite a bit of time. But we have nearly achieved the impossible. All 3 SROs are on the same page. Because if you don't have a commonality and a homogeneous way of reporting, if each SRO starts having its own format, its own way of looking at it, it becomes very difficult. We can't really compare organizations. So today we have said all 3 will have to have a common format. It's happened. SEBI is notifying it, and that will get used by their individual assessors. So there is an organizational framework which has to take responsibility to signing off, but they will have to use assessors who are trained to do this, because we are convinced that a cost accountant or a chartered accountant by himself may not have all the knowledge of social assessment. So that first question is answered. The second one is very, very specific, because in this 8 listings that we have had, Unnati is only Section 8 company, if I can recollect it. And so they have a real challenge, and that's not a question which either the SEBI or the exchanges can answer. It has to come from government. So we have already got the government to be aware of this challenge. Let's see what the finance bill brings in it. And so this is something which Section 8 companies together have to also represent the government and call it out, saying that this is a challenge, we cannot do it. What Ramesh explains is real. LODR is the best way to go forward, because that's something which is going to demand of all organizations, any organization on the platform. Specifically, other NGOs don't have this problem. If you're registered under Trust Act or the Societies Act, you may not go through this. But if you're registered as a Section 8 company, you definitely have this challenge. And the government is abreast of it, but what the government does, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to comment on from SEBI's perspective. The third thing that you said was on the cost is high. Cost is definitely high, Ramesh, I think, but it's coming down from the time Unnati could negotiate a lot of pro bono work. That's not the norm. Every organization cannot have the network or the goodwill for them to do pro bono support. It is high, and we are hoping that as systems get established, as processes get cleaned up, as professional support organizations, whether it's lawyers, whether it's chartered accountants, start understanding that there's a higher cost, it will come down. Right now, it is close to anywhere between 8 to 10 lakhs is a minimum that each organization has to spend. Right from escrow accounts, people are asking to pay for it. We have for the first 20 organizations that get listed, the way we could solve it immediately is to provide at least 5 lakhs of subsidy to the organizations, actual grant from the capacity building fund. That is not a norm. We can't do this for all organizations. At some point of time, we'll not have money to give. So we have to find an answer. So we are trying to, we are having, soon we're going to have a meeting, Ramesh, with all the other players in the game and talk to them about how they can't charge. If they continue to do that, then we'll have to have a government intervention. Right now, I think we should expect market players to behave and not be greedy. But if it does not happen, then at some point of time, we'll have to think of government intervention.
Yeah. So Thank you. I just want one worrying factor is 31st of October is the last for your social impact audit. And nothing has happened till July. Right now, July has started. They will also need to finalize somebody, and then they do the work and then submit the report, takes that much extra time. So just keep that in mind, because this should have happened much before April. So that is one. Last, I will leave one suggestion. Of course, I have taken up this with the ministry also. We have written mails, everything. You know about it. The last is an important suggestion. And there is one clause called 35 CCD. Okay, this is a specific clause of skilling and empowerment kind of thing, where a company has to apply to the income tax CBD and all, and say, I want to do this project, specify the project, and based on the project, they identify and get it done, and they get 100% tax exemption for this job, right? My point was, why can't that get extended to SSC? Because it is a specific project, it is regulated, and anybody who is giving money for that project for skilling or empowerment in SSC should automatically get that benefit, because it's already there in the Income Tax Act. It is available.
Let me clarify.
So
Ramesh, what you're talking is for specifically for skilling, which is a national priority, and that's how the act is driven by that. Whereas the social stock exchange mandate, and I see one question in the chat box, is driven by the Companies Act defining what is eligible for CSR funding. So instead of creating confusion, we said all activities as listed out in the Companies Act for CSR funding would automatically qualify, which is 17 activities. If you have to say all of them should get CCD, it will completely mess up the income tax process, because people doing in education, people working in healthcare, people working in art and culture, people working other things, which may not necessarily, all of them may not be national priorities, because the CCD exists for a particular reason why it was made. And I think it's very difficult to say everything should be for SSC.
I didn't say that. I'm only saying CCD can be extended for SSC listing which are in that space. I am not saying. Similarly, there is something else in 150% for innovations and research. So if tomorrow an SSC has a research and innovation subscription happening, that can get extended to SSC. I am not saying color it with a pink this one.
No, I got it. So that's a good point. Let's see how both these are policy considerations for government.
I agree. I have luckily I have had the opportunity. We had the opportunity to present it for the pre-budget. We have given the letter also to the finance this one. So hopefully, please, you are a very important person, right? So that is why you should know about it. That is
definitely. This is a good. Both the points are good. I'll definitely take it up.
Thank
so
you.
now people have asked, how do you make sure it doesn't get skewed? We cannot make sure anything gets skewed. Anything listed in the Companies Act for CSR activities can be applied. It's up to the listing organization. Any of the 17 activities can apply. As much as you can't ensure that CSR doesn't get skewed. People are applying only for health and education. And so it looks skewed, but the opportunity from the government is very clear. 17 listed activities you can apply. Same thing applies to us also. Then how do you register an NPO for social stock exchange? Please look at the exchange information FAQs on NSE site. All information is provided. And so this is basically an operational responsibility of exchanges. They have put out how to get it done. Also, a lot of town halls are being organized by social stock exchanges. Every city is, I myself attended quite a few, whether it's Bangalore, Delhi, Lucknow, other cities. So whenever these exchanges are organizing it, do it, reach out to your local representative in the stock exchange. First, go to the FAQs, see if you qualify. And there's also questions and conditions put out in the SEBI website also. Take a look at both and do it. ZCZP, Bhaskar Ganeshan wants to know if it is to be issued separately for each project. Absolutely, yes. It's an individual. If you're doing 4 different projects, you can get to have 4 different listings. So if for each project, you have to list separately and do it. Social entrepreneurship does not mean non-for-profit route. Like I clarified, that's why the for-profit route is allowed. But you must demonstrate a social primacy of social intent as defined in the FAQs I just said, either in terms of coverage, in terms of beneficiaries, in terms of expenditures, in terms of outcomes. That 67% of what you do will actually have measurable, demonstrable social impact. And that is what, that's how we're doing. That's how it's been done. The problem is you can always say you should have a standard template. What is standard is a difficult thing to prove. A standard has to be a standard which ensures diligence of actual organizations which are able to demonstrate trust in the system. Now, pardon me for saying this, I'm a very responsible person coming from the social sector. We have all kinds of organizations in the social space, from universities which are registering as not-for-profit, to hospitals making a lot of money still calling themselves not-for-profit, to all kinds of NGOs which are fly-by-night operators, to very good ones. I'm not saying you can't paint them with the same brush, but you can't have one document when there's so much of variety in the space. So you must have something which calls for establishment of standards, or standards of governance, standards of management, standards demonstrating no conflict, complete disclosures. And that makes it look difficult, but isn't it good for the sector? The sector has for long in need of a standardization of all this. So defining a standard itself was not there. So now we have defined the standard. The social stock exchange provides an opportunity for standardization. Once all of us become comfortable with it, it won't look difficult. So I won't say it's been made so difficult because we have taken the easy route of not following standards. Now it looks difficult. That is my view. You don't have to agree with it, Mahima ji, but that is the way I would look at it. The PPT
Sir,
obviously.
just one question, sir.
Please.
Because we are in a small NGO, we are registered with the NSC, and our total annual turnover is around 1 crore. So, sir, but when we see such document and we try to frame such document, the issues we face is like it is very much having such terms which are not very clear to us, and if we try to frame it on our own, then we feel a lot of difficulties. When we approach to chartered accountants, they ask a lot of amount, and we are not very sure how to frame a document, and how to, after the framing of the document, how to approach to the funders, because we are not very well known. We are working, and most of our people are into ground implementation. We are not very much, means like 3 or 4 people we are like managing in the managing team, but most of the people, they are under the ground implementation, they are helping the rural people. So it is becoming a challenge for us to file a listing document, and after that searching for funders for us.
Yeah, funders, that is your obligation. Anyway, you have to search for funders. You can't expect the social stock exchange. It's something like a company listing will say, get me the investors also. That is primarily your ability to popularize your listing document, reach out to people across the country, put it out in the space. Now, Zerodha has agreed that for every listing, they will have a ticker which will go in their site, so that people who are coming to their site for regular investments also see every organization which is going to get listed. Now, I'll answer your primary question. Yes, it looks very difficult for small NGOs right now, which truly it is very difficult because the language is very alien. But remember, this is just a starting ground. All problems cannot be sorted out overnight. And as everybody is learning, NGOs also will have to learn. Now, if you think this is too challenging for you, the traditional route is still there. Please go the traditional route. If you choose to come the social stock exchange route, which I'm not saying is for everybody, it's one more additional pipeline. So I'm again going back to my presentation. It's a supplement. It's not supplanting traditional philanthropy. So we cannot lose sight of traditional philanthropy. There are various opportunities for us. Government grants will continue. Philanthropic activities will continue. Individual retail investor donations will continue. Social stock exchange provides more consistent, continuous funding with a measurable social outcome. And so we must not lose sight of it. My recommendation is have one large NGO which has the ability to do all this, who can operate through 5 or 6 or 10 small NGOs who are very good in the ground, very good ground presence. I'm recommending this to many organizations, even my own. Though we had one direct listing, we are now thinking how do we support 10 small NGOs working in the space of education itself. Or Unnati, which has got a very good model for skill development, could tie up with some 10 small skill development organizations across India. They take on the burden and responsibility of negotiating all the complexities of a newly emerging space like social stock exchange. They ensure that they monitor, support, train the small organizations to deliver results to them. And then they aggregate it and disclose. The exchange doesn't stop this concept of a mother NGO. So every NGO doesn't have to get registered. Every NGO doesn't have to get listed. The demands are real. So if you're not ready, don't do it. If you're ready, and if you're a small organization, if it is too demanding on you, reconsider. If you're able to partner, the problems of NGOs also is we don't collaborate with each other. We always have this competing mindset. 2 NGOs coming together, we think I should get the money first, other will get it later. Why don't we just come together and say we'll aggregate our abilities, work together and do it. So this is not a solution for all problems of NGO sector. This is not a panacea. It creates its own problems by making more demands on us. So the preparedness of the sector is what we're looking at. And that is why the capacity building fund has been set up, to keep going around the country and training. If things had been easier, maybe many more listings would have come. But please bear in mind, Mahima, if things had been easier, many more not so good organizations also might have come in. The barriers are slightly higher now. It will get lowered as we become more experienced. But if barriers are too low, and then the sector gets a bad name again, the social stock exchange will not continue. Because that's how the government will look at it, another failed experiment. But the sector cannot have another failed experiment. So this would be my view on it. I think I know I've run out of time. So I would, if any other burning questions,
Neeraj Trivedi, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, sir. So I just had one fundamental question. Okay, this is very, very fundamental.
Please.
Any reason to bring NGO and NPO on a common platform? Because NPOs might also have investors who are going to back them up in this process. which is not the liberty that the NGOs would have, right? So in terms of getting it listed, getting it marketed, getting it reaching people. So aren't you already creating the inequality even by bringing NPO with NGO right now in this platform itself?
I wouldn't agree with you on this because India doesn't have a standardized NPO framework. India doesn't have a definition for social enterprise.
Correct.
And so in India, all that we have is organizations registering themselves on different laws. You can register under Youth Affairs Ministry, you can register as a Yuvaka Mandal, you can register as under Bombay Trust Act, you can register under State Registration Act 1860, you can register as under Income Tax as a trust. You know how homogeneous definition of an organization. Everybody is called an NGO. So for us, that's why we are saying we are not looking at what is your primary statutory birth. You should have a statutory birth, legal obligation. But all we are now saying is, are you registered under 12A and do you have an ATG? So that is only definite because there's no common definition. And there is no definition for NPO in India. Just every NGO is an NPO because it doesn't make a profit.
That is why. Yeah, that is why this question, because there is no legal definition of the word NPO anywhere in the entire legal statute.
There is no legal definition of an NGO also. That's what I'm trying to say. So we are now saying, and there are 150 different definitions around the world for social enterprises. So we said any organization, if your existence for 3 years with an annual turnover of at least 50 lakhs, if you've been in, and if you can demonstrate, if you're listing and registering, if you have a 12A and ATG, and then you qualify. If you're a for-profit organization, if you can demonstrate for a social intent for the project you're applying, if you can show 67% of it, then that also qualifies for it. So we are now saying NPO just means a status of being not for profit. That's all. It doesn't mean anything else, and that's all it is. So it's just used synonymously, but there's no legalistic differentiation between.
Thank you.
Hope I clarified that, Neeraj.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Majumdar, please. Mr. Gautam Khandelwal, please go ahead.
My question is a social impact assessment report required as a condition for registering on the social stock exchange?
For registering, we are not asking. If you're while at the point of registering, there is no reason to produce it. But after registering, if you want a registration, you're agreeing that henceforth you will because there has to be a demonstration of trust and accountability of an organization for which exchanges are extending due diligence. So once you register, we are now saying within the next 1 year, you'll have to produce your social impact reporting. If you don't do, it will get deregistered because registration is a demonstration of your trust to the investor community. And tomorrow, if that is not happening, how can you be on that platform? So we have recommended from the advisory committee, we can give now we have said the coming 1 year is what time is given for all the registered entities. If you do not essentially produce a social impact report for what you're already doing, then that means you're not able to meet the standards and you will automatically exit the registration process also. So if you list within that time, the listing itself demands all that. But you can't simply say it's not just another ATG kind of a thing where you go there. ATG has got obligations, right? We have got obligations to fulfill to keep the ATG renewed. Similarly, here also, it's a due diligence certification. Many NGOs wanted to get registered and not listed, and we understood that they are using it to raise money, saying we are registered in the exchanges, we are highly standardized, we are now able to reach standards. That is not it can't be a PR instrument for fundraising. There is an obligation of reporting also.
Thank you.
Hello, may I come in now, sir? I'm KK Majumdar speaking.
I would like, this is the last question because I have to leave at 5, it's already 5. Please go ahead.
KK Majumdar. May I ask, please?
Please go ahead, Majumdar ji.
Yeah, interesting presentation, Dr. Balasubramanian. In fact, I read in on book that in emerging economies, the impact investment is growing, and our Reserve Bank of India has also mandated the banks to check the risk assessment or sustainability of the projects. So in that respect, this social impact investment is a matter of concern now. I would like to understand from your presentation that how in the value chain of this process, as a technical person who I am not in a social sector because I work in a corporate, but I have a fair understanding of social development and sustainability part. So how do you suggest that people like us who had a technical background and now are not directly associated with any corporate can create value in this process?
See, it's essentially you could possibly some of the things that we're challenged with is how do you actually look at newer kind of instruments, because innovative financing is an expanding field globally. So understanding how do you actually bring in innovative instruments, finance instruments, which also meets the requirements of social stock exchange is something there. Simplifying standards, like already we said, trying to work with getting NGOs, like for example, Mahima has already said, is there any other NGO working in this space? So if you can be the aggregator, work with all of them, that's one thing. Getting to know more about what's happening, getting professional expertise, and helping train NGOs to do it. Offering pro bono services professionally once you crack the code. It's not rocket science. After all, each of us are very capable. If you can help making small documents, small presentations, sharing with the communities and telling how do you go about doing this? What are the pressure points that are available? How do you go about it? See, because Unnati did this, Ramesh knows where the shoe is pinching today. None of us imagined his problems. Honestly, I have done so much of thinking for 10 years. I didn't imagine that because we allowed Section 8 companies, we'll have a new kind of a problem. Maybe then we would have said phase 1 will only allow Societies Act and Income Tax Act. Phase 2 will allow Section 8 companies. So these are all new emerging challenges. So looking at, can people look at the predictive problems that might arise and see how we can solve for it. So we need more and more people to be a knowledge think tank thinking about this. And if you want to bring the cost down, we want more such people who will be part of the talent supply or knowledge supply side, which will automatically reduce cost if we start doing it pro bono, because others will say that somebody else is giving me equally good service for the sake of making the system mature. So I would say there's a host of things that you can help us with. Please feel free to start engaging with the exchanges, and they are the actual executors of the vision that we put together. And so they would be the people who need message to spread, who need capacity building to happen, who need the solutions to be communicated to communities, who needs to be the aggregators, who needs to be the people who can help collaboration to establish itself and bring up problems and advocate with the government for us how to actually make it simpler and better. So there's a lot of things you can do. My only request is let's not imagine somebody else will do it, because this is a new process. Everybody is learning. I, for one, very clearly know that none of us is an expert. We're all trying to know more and more. So with all your help, with this kind of questions that were asked today, it itself has opened up a lot of action items for me. We also learn, we also try to do it. And let's all try to understand that we're touching different parts of the elephant, but the elephant is real. And we have to all start looking at the larger canvas of the real elephant standing in front of us. The social sector needs support. And once we do it, then we'll start finding solutions. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
And
sir.
I have to really...
If I may add just one few lines. Actually, sir, the JED assessment by the MSME, that is zero effect, zero defect concept, the government of India's, they have introduced a 5-day training program to build capacity for the assessors. Now, I am one of such assessor. I undergone for 5 days training program. I am assessing industries for their certification in gold, silver, and other certification. Now, similarly, I would appreciate that if this organization organizes similar kind of training for our capacity building, so that we can fruitfully contribute. Because I am sure there will be a lot of organization who will need hand-holding approach to make them go ahead and do the correct job, especially in terms of governance and other execution parts. So if you arrange or rather organize some kind of training program, maybe online or something, then probably we'll be able to contribute more meaningfully. Thank you.
This is more for Dr. Gupta ji, so I will leave.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of ICMAI Social Auditors Organization and all of us present here, we sincerely thank Dr. Balu for sparing his valuable time and giving us very, very enlightening presentation and interaction thereafter on some of the issues and queries raised by the participants. I would request all the participants to kindly share if you have any further queries, any further views. I've shared my email in the chat box. Kindly send it across to us and we'll try and find out answers to some of those queries at least and get back to you and revert back to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.